All right, welcome back to the Red Laws, everyone. Joining us today is the legendary Tara Reade, author of Left Out, When the Truth Doesn't Fit In. She's an outspoken writer, activist, an anti-imperialist, and a survivor. We're thrilled to get to know Tara today and talk to her about the failures of the #MeToo movement, among other things. Recently on The Dive with Jackson Hinkle, Tara, you said that Edward Snowden and Julian Assange were some of the most important figures of our time, but we think what you have done is equally as important and impactful. What you've done has exposed our injustice system, and doing that in any capacity really puts you at risk for a lot of bullshit, to be frank. You've really been through it. You've done the thing. Thank you for sticking with your truth, and thank you for persevering. We need heroes like you to expose this, and what you did really broke the blue MAGA people's brains. They just don't know how to respond to that. All that Me Too, it fell apart, right?
Right.
So so firstly, we want to say that we firmly believe Tara Reade's story. So going forward, for our viewers, just know that we will be talking about some sensitive issues. So if you need a break, be sure to pause it. So also, getting into it, Tara, your story was incredibly inconvenient for the DNC. They waged an all-out war on Brett Kavanaugh. There was a media storm against Bill Cosby. One of the major talking points liberals were equipped with were sexual assault allegations against Trump. And if you supported Donald Trump, you supported a rapist, and they just kept doing that. So what happened with the Believe women, the Believe survivors, the #MeToo movement? Why were you the exception here?
Well, I definitely was politically inconvenient. And, I came forward in 1993. When it happened, I tried to file a sexual harassment report. Basically, I was silenced and I was threatened and ignored. And then I came forward in 2019, and then with the rest of the history, as you know, in 2020. And so when I was coming forward and trying to get help from Time's Up, and not knowing that the founder, Anita Dunn, was actually already working for Joe Biden on his campaign for PR. So I didn't know that. So I'm looking for this help. They initially accept my case and they were going to help me. And then they said, when it appeared that he was the nominee, that they couldn't help me for political reasons. They didn't tell me there was a conflict of interest and that Anita Dunn's PR firm was representing him. So it was a really difficult time. And during part of the time I was coming forward, there was rumors Biden was going to drop out. So it's interesting how when Bernie dropped out, literally within 24 hours, the trolls were already after me, but then it became like this very concentrated, coordinated attack. I was given death threats. I was told, if you don't shut up, in private messages, if you don't shut up, we're going to post your bankruptcy. If you don't shut up, we're going to post your divorce. They were threatening people that were supporting me. They were threatening cooperating witnesses. And, looking at it now, from a more meta point of view, it was a moment in time where the internet was being used and fueled, social media was, to actually weaponize against a private citizen. To me, you all are heroes because you're lifting up stories that normally aren't told, right? So I wouldn't compare myself to Julian Assange or Edward Snowden by any means. I mean, they've risked their lives. I mean, goodness, Julian Assange is in prison 2 years and suffering, and and Edward Snowden is not able to come home, and he's not able to move around in Europe or do anything. And they also exposed war crimes, and they exposed the biggest story of our generation, which is that our own government is spying on its own citizens. My story was important in the sense that it was a personal story of a crime that happened to me that was not investigated, not adjudicated. And then I was threatened and silenced by the machine that protects Joe Biden. And I'm coming from a place where I was a lifelong Democrat and was part of the machine for a while. So breaking away from the machine is hard, and then going up against it, it's almost like you're just getting grinded into dust. So it was a tough time, and or still is actually. You know, when I made the announcement, Medicare for All announced I'm going to be talking at the march, July 24th, in Los Angeles, Saturday. And as soon as they did that, the trolls attacked, you know, and they were just all over anyone who supported, you know, Medicare for All or me. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey.
I'm really thrilled that you're speaking for Medicare for All. I have that flyer. We're gonna put it on the video description. It looks really great.
Thank you.
I wish we could come and see and support you. So if you're in LA,
Yeah.
please be sure to attend that if you can.
Yeah.
Eric, do you want to ask the next question?
So your story is just one of many examples of how our system benefits the elites, especially when it comes to working class people seeking justice against them. Bill Cosby was recently released after dozens of women came out about the sexual assault committed by him. Meanwhile, Julian Assange, the greatest journalist of our time, spent his 50th birthday tortured in a prison cell for exposing the US empire. What does this tell us about our so-called justice system here, and what can we do to change it?
Our justice system is broken, you know, and one thing that we could do to change it, a big signal that it's changing, is to release Julian Assange from that extradition order. He's being held on remand. There's not even charges against him. It's and he's Australian citizen. Right. So I don't really still understand the technical reach of the US government trying to extradite him. And I think that it's actually a human rights violation, and it's a violation. I think that free speech for all journalists to look at and be very afraid, and I don't care if you're a corporate journalist or an independent, this is really going to have a chilling effect on journalism. And there's also been a narrative to punish him and to make an example out of him, which is just the wrong way we want to go as a nation and part of the world, because this is the whole world has their eyes on this. And I wanted to go back to something that was said about the Me Too. You know, we have hashtag free Julian Assange. We have the hashtag Me Too. Hashtags are great and they can get people around a message, but we need activism. We need to make those phone calls, write those letters. We need to, you know, like in the Medicare for All, we need to really hold our politicians accountable for what they were elected to do. And they were promising they were going to get us Medicare for All. Well, they're not. And here we are. And all those promises that the Democrats supposedly made have been broken. So we have to be active and hold them accountable and not treat them like celebrities. And as far as Julian Assange goes, I mean, supporting their legal team is the best thing we can do. And making sure and pressuring the mainstream media to cover Julian Assange. I don't see any New York Times or Washington Post articles about journalism being threatened. I don't even see something from The Guardian lately. You know, I want to see more. I want to see international press and corporate media raise up that story.
Yeah, and the story is wrong when they do say something about it on the corporate media. They make it seem like he is locked up for exposing the DNC, but that's not what he was charged for. It was charged for exposing war crimes.
Right.
And it's just they try to make him out to be some like Trump supporting, like whether he was or wasn't isn't really the point.
He made a tweet. He made a tweet that said, "I would rather," it was something like, "I'd rather eat my insides than vote for Trump." He is not a supporter and never was.
Right, and even if he was, like that's not even the point. The point is that whatever there's never been a lie. There's never been like a false story that WikiLeaks has ever published.
Right.
And this is what happens to people who expose empire. And if anyone cares about freedom, they should be supporting Julian Assange getting freed from prison.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we were talking earlier about Cosby being released, and I don't know if you saw the RT op-ed that I did, but I did an op-ed and I interviewed Nicole Egan, who wrote the book Chasing Cosby. She's been working on that story for 16 years. And, you know, in my op-ed, I talk about this. She said not only was she, not surprisingly, threatened by Cosby's people, but the DA threatened to put her in jail for what she was writing back for the Philadelphia Daily News. And I mean, that's just that. I mean, we don't want that kind of atmosphere around celebrity, powerful men. They can't have that much cachet where that they can threaten journalists with jail and prison and actually get away with it.
That's the dictatorship of capital working. And I think that it goes hand in hand with how liberals or so-called like Democrats will like browbeat you if you don't agree with whatever the party, you know, their party is putting forward. They gave us Joe Biden, and we were like as soon as he entered the race, like I was like, I don't like this. They're trying really hard. Like they don't think they can beat Bernie. So they're with whoever else was there. So they're gonna pull Joe Biden out of the closet and put a skeleton on stage, and you know, Eric and I are communists. We're pretty open about that.
Yeah.
So when we ask questions and we say no, we need to refuse this. You know, we'll support you unless it's Joe Biden. Like, why are we doing it? Like, and then they're like, oh, you support Trump. Like anyone who dares to expose the flaws in whatever system we have, whatever you want to call it, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you're a genocide denying, like racist, neo-Nazi, Nazball piece of shit. This is how they're winning, because they threaten us with these like memes.
They're doing it with troll farms. And so a lot of times when you see people trolling you with those narratives, it's just simply troll bots. And I didn't know what those were until after I came forward about Joe Biden and learned about it. But as you know, I have a federal lawsuit right now against Sally Albright for copyright violation. And what she did was very egregious. It was very harmful to my book, Left Out When the Truth Doesn't Fit In. She read it apparently on video and then told people not to buy it and then have them email her for free copies. So all of this is documented, and we've filed, you know, a lawsuit. She's avoiding service, and that's where it is right now. We've tried 8 times, more like 9 or 10 times now. And I think the court at some point intervenes, and then, you know, we'll go from there. But, you know, it's part of a really systemic problem. The harm that they were trying to do economic harm. I had people that were supporting me. Like there was a trauma professor who works for Columbia. They wrote emails to try to get him fired. Things like that. I mean, it's like, so it's not just happening on social media. They're going outside social media. They tried to, as you know, have me put in prison. There was an email campaign by the trolls to the DA of Monterey, where I was an expert witness. And they were, and to these defense attorneys, and the defense attorneys were saying I committed perjury when I was an expert witness about my education. I never committed perjury. I was cleared of all of that, but it did a nice little distraction for Joe Biden, didn't it? Because we stopped talking about 1993. They tried everything with me to silence me. And, you know, lucky for me, I reached out and did some op-eds. New York Times shockingly didn't print them, but RT did. So yeah,
of course.
I know. I don't know why. I'm still waiting for the email back from New York Times. They haven't gotten back to me. But RT was gracious enough to lift up the op-eds that I produced, and you know, and that's been really meaningful for me. And then of course the book TV Guestbert decided to publish it, and I was really lucky to have somebody care enough to want to take that risk, because definitely I've been persona non grata. You know, and as far as, you know, political beliefs, you know, I'm anti-imperialist. I'm a leftist. I'm, you know, as leftist as you come. And my mom, you know, studied Karl Marx, and she was part of Progressive Labor Party. So she was a big activist and Committee Against Racism in Chicago and Madison, Wisconsin, when I was little. Yeah. So I met, like, I was at those marches, like, in the 80s, 70s when I was a little kid. So way before you were thought of. So. You weren't even twinkles in someone's eyes. Like you were, like you were in the universe waiting to come through.
Aunt Tara's always been a trailblazer, huh?
But I told a funny story once. I guess it's appropriate here. When I was a little kid, my brothers were into, you know, different things politically and studying. One brother was into Buddhism and studied meditation, and the other one was studying some Karl Marx, and he gave me the book, and he was telling me about 8 or 9 years old. And we had this little tree stump at our school. And so I started telling the kids there was no God. These are all a bunch of Lutheran farm kids, because I was in Wisconsin, out in the middle of nowhere. And there was time, you don't need to go to church. There's no God. We're oppressed. I probably had no idea what that meant. And I was giving my version, God knows what that was, or not God, I guess, whatever. The universe doesn't know what that was, of Karl Marx and his philosophy. So I was giving this little talk. It got back, the kids went home, and then were like, they didn't want to go to church, the Lutheran church, because there was no God. Tara said there wasn't. There's this guy named Karl Marx. Anyway, the school got called, my parents got called in, and they said, well, she has some leadership qualities, but we'd like to have her do something different. So could she keep her Karl Marx book at home and not talk about that anymore? And so they put an orange sash on me with a badge, and I became the bus patrol, and I became a complete fascist on the bus. And I was done with Karl Marx for a while I was a fascist.
Oh my God.
That somewhere, right?
There was a blog, I would have put everyone in it. Like I was 8 and I had a badge.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
An orange sash and a badge.
That's my little Karl Marx story.
Oh my
Orange
God,
is
that
the new
was
fast.
wonderful.
That's what that book's called. Orange is the new fast.
Yeah.
Oh
The
my
orange
God.
sash to Fash pipeline right there.
Right.
The school pipeline.
Well, it's interesting. So like speaking of like Joe Biden earlier, instead of the DOJ investigating your abuser, Joe Biden, they have their focus on you. Tell us how what Edward Snowden warned us about is happening to you.
Well, he warned us about two things, right? About surveillance and lack of privacy. But he also said, look, if they're going to weaponize against governments, if they're going to use this playbook of smearing, attacking, you know, demonizing someone, they're going to do it to private citizens, anyone who's trying to raise up the truth. And so here you have it. So yeah. Yeah,
and you know, we do see a lot of like liberals, you know, supporting these, you know, campaigns of silencing people, and you know, there's been I was watching the Jimmy Dore show earlier, and he did a story on how there's more support among Democratic voters for like the CIA, FBI, the NSA than Republicans or independents. So
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I have to watch that. Okay, that's so interesting.
Yeah, so it's just,
what's that about?
I guess, what are you gonna say, Fox?
Do you remember like when, like after the Capitol riots thing happened, and so like suddenly everybody on the left was like, call the FBI on your neighbors.
Right.
And
AUC put up that letter and said, tell, you know, if your friends and family, it was like, whoa, this is like,
this is what I've been saying, like this, like the whole primary for this recent election. I was like, this is some like cop bullshit here that we're getting from the DNC. Like they literally gave us a cop for on the ticket, you know, and so you know, I did a lot of street work on the ground last year, like a couple of protests a week, and we did not spend hours organizing and being on the ground for George Floyd, for you to suddenly be suspicious of your Trump supporting neighbor and call the cops on them and make jokes about that stuff. What have we learned here? Clearly nothing, because now it's cool to call call the feds on your 80-year-old grandmother who supports Donald Trump. Like, grow up. Grow up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Ben wanted to come, so
Hi,
Hey
Ben.
Hey Ben.
he's like, okay.
Ben, where were you on January 6th?
Where were you?
Yeah.
I know.
No, yeah, they're doing this all over Facebook. You know, like Facebook they have like there's like a new way to, you know, let report people to Facebook.
Oh, for extremist content.
Yeah, for the content. And I mean, look at what they did recently with the anti-imperialist media. They seized the anti-imperialist media.
Yeah.
Oh, in Iran, yeah.
33 websites. I think Richard Medhurst does such a good job of breaking down some of the empire's approaches, and Caitlin Johnstone, you know,
love her.
they're really good, you know, they're very educational. And what I love about Richard is because he knows Americans don't know their geography. He always has maps and he's like, okay, here's Syria. And I love that. And I always kind of laugh to myself because I'm like, he knows he's in Austria, but he like knows that we don't know like where things are. And so it's awesome. Yeah. And so I would watch people like him to really, you know, keep up with. And of course, we were talking about this Left Bitches podcast with Ryan Wentz, and you know, their crew is really good. But yeah, it's been hard though to lift up certain narratives. And I think, you know, I don't like seeing the argument that's been happening between Ryan Grimm and Jimmy Dore and, you know, but Aaron Mate is a fine investigative reporter, and I believe his investigation. I don't like the way it devolved with the TYT crew, but I never watched them anyway, and they're like establishment Democrats are not even that. They're not even. I just never watched them, so I didn't really know why they were in the mix, but.
I've been trying to keep that you know, I can't get away from it. You know, they all figure it out.
They will figure it out. They will come to an agreement to not agree or agree to some things and not agree to others. But I think it's good that we're having, you know, but as long as the dialogue is lifted to an intelligent debate, like what Jackson Hinkle did with an actual debate about the topic, that then rather than personal attacks. So that's really good.
Right, which is why, you know, we don't normally like talk about Bosch on our channel. We just try to stick to issues, and but we recommend watching our friend Jackson Hinkle's debate with Bosch. Bosch cannot handle the questions that Jackson is asking, and he just like right off the bat at the beginning of the interview, Bosch is like, oh, you have a mental illness like that. Why did you come here? If that's what you're going to read the Wikipedia page 6 hours before your debate,
right? And
then say that Jackson reading the actual report that he's got pulled up in front of him with names and citations and sources and dates and timestamps, like it's right there. He's looking at it like the official report.
Well, I mean, as you know, as socialists and leftists, I mean, however you define yourself, it's our duty to expose these opportunists, whether it be from TYT, whether it be from BreadTube. It's our duty to do it. And you know, I just want to say, you know, Caleb Moffman just wrote a fantastic book on exposing BreadTube and how they serve imperialism. And
I want to get that. How is it available?
On Amazon.
Okay.
It's, you know, it just came out recently. It's fantastic. He just lays out what BreadTube is and who the actors are, and who is, you know, coaching them, and who you know, where they get this, or I'm sorry, how dangerous their ideology really is. So he just exposes it all. And it's really great so far, and it's just that's our duty to expose these people and show them for who they are, and I think that's what, you know, what we're doing now. And I think, you know, Jackson did that really well with Vosh. And I don't see this really lasting long, this whole bread tube universe. I think, as you know, once we have more principled Marxists, you know, having channels like this and actually speaking to what real Marxism looks like, and how that can work in America, the bread tube universe would just like dissipate away, because they don't have actual objective facts. They just have abstractions, and you know, just, you know, they don't really have facts on their side. They're not scientific. I think we got to support media platforms and just like commentators, like you know,
well, like your channel, like your channel and what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like Knight, you know, who might be call himself a socialist, not a communist, but still he's anti-capitalist. And unfortunately, I think anti-capitalist is considered one of the extreme groups by the categories. And you know, when I saw that list, the animal rights activists, I mean, okay, pretty much they put an umbrella of anybody that says no, of anyone that's like questioning the way something's happening, like maybe protesting pesticides, Monsanto, you know. So it's really concerning that the Homeland Security has set categories of people that are going to be considered extremists. I don't think people realize how serious that is, because the Espionage Act has changed under Obama, and it's very wide and very kind of hard to, it's not very precise. It's pretty broad purpose, and they can take people into custody without even giving them counsel for a long period of time.
Yes, you can be detained. U.S. citizens can be locked up if they're deemed a terrorist, and if you are, like you said, if you challenge capitalism, if you're against capitalism, you're automatically a suspect.
No, to me, like when you hear the word terrorist, like what do you think? What comes into your head? I mean, as an anti-imperialist, I have an opinion on this, but what do you hear, both of you?
Wall Street.
Right.
I hear people
they're like you a terrorist, but you're thinking guns and you're thinking people acting outside the social norms, right? Right. And for them to label terrorists, which I don't know, in our vernacular in American culture, means usually is attached to weapons or some sort of militia, or attached, you know, it's attached to serious, a movement like that. It's really sketchy that they're just kind of making blanket assumptions about people. It's frightening.
Yeah. And we said that was going to happen. We were like, no, they're going to increase the police state, because that's what Joe Biden's been doing for 50 years, increasing the police state. And here we are, you saying that you're an anti-capitalist, like this has gone full circle. Like this is like saying that was how you could get around saying I'm a communist. Oh, I'm an anti-capitalist. But that doesn't mean anything anymore, because like Caleb Maupin lays out in his book, these people who claim anti-capitalism end up just recycling CIA lies. The CIA doesn't even have to train them or infiltrate their group anymore. They're just doing it because that's how we've been cultured now, is to just, you know, oh yeah, I'm a leftist, but I'm against everything leftist countries do. Like, you know, they're committing war crimes, but you know what? Fuck Cuba. Their government is bad. Like that's like we're seeing that right now. There's like, it's gone full circle. We have to break this cycle. We have to break this cycle, and I think part of that is normalizing things like, yeah, I'm a Marxist, or.
Well, and part of it too is getting the fossils to sit down. I mean, like Dianne Feinstein and Nancy, I'm sorry, but they're fossilized in their seats. And it's like, sit down and you guys, I mean, and I'm not trying to be ageist, it's just the truth. Like we were meant to be in there for life. They were meant to give a few ideas, do a few things, and then leave. And it's time for your generation to come up and take leadership and new ideas and new ways of looking at things. And the world has changed. Like the world that you're living in, my daughter's living in, is different than the world I grew up in. And your vision is what needs to bring forth the forward movement of the world. So I'm not being ageist by saying that. I mean, Bernie Sanders was very much a visionary, no matter how old he is, but he still fell in line when the DNC asked him to. He still fell in line and said nothing about my story. He still fell in line and held on to his friendship with Joe Biden.
Right.
His
So
good pal Joe Biden. That was such a betrayal. It was such, and the way that he just let them throw Tulsi Gabbard under the bus too.
Yes.
Just like really,
she put her whole career on the line for him.
Totally, absolutely. No matter. There's part of me that still really, really, really likes her. You know, I'm not going to agree with her on everything. You know, I don't do that. But yeah. I really went hard for her in the primary.
Yeah.
Because she offered, like, almost like she brought the anti-imperialism. You know,
she offered
her, like,
she offered the reality of war. Like they're romanticizing war. Like, did you see those series of tweets about comparing dropping bombs on Russia's pipeline to sex? That was bizarre. And the people that were doing those, but what was more bizarre was the people doing those tweets weren't just randoms on Twitter. They were political operatives out of DC.
Wow.
And I looked at that as very, very worrisome, because what they were trying to do is get the younger people like, oh, because they haven't been in a war. Oh, they haven't experienced, you know, the horrors of war, unless you've been in one of the countries that we've decimated, like Syria or Iraq. So they're making it seem exciting or like a video game, and they're trying to, like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It was propaganda that was very concerning. Yeah. I mean, it was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. They were saying things like, like 4th of July, like that's how, you know, it's better having sex and, you know, what?
Wow.
Like, yeah.
I
have to look at it, but yeah, there's like 4 or 5 of them.
They love obfuscating like anti-imperialism or even like anti-war stances. And Kamala Harris was really, really good at that when she and Tulsi Gabbard were going at each other. Like they want to make anti-imperialists or anti-war voices and people who support them look insane. They want us to look crazy. And they want to make anti-war activism crazy.
Yeah, like what they did to Gravel, like Senator Gravel.
Yes.
What they did to Tulsi Gabbard by calling her a Russian asset. Oh, then they called her some other kind of asset. I mean, she was a veteran that had been how many tours of duty, and she's
not a veteran. She's still serving. She's still serving. Right. And so Hillary Clinton's accusations that she was a Russian asset literally could get her the death penalty. You know, that's like. Yeah. That is so beyond fucked up. Like,
it is. Well, Hillary Clinton is beyond fucked up. So that's my opinion. I mean, like anyone who supports her husband's rape and then like covers it up, like, you know, of Juanita Broaddrick. I mean, because I have talked with Juanita Broaddrick many times. I don't agree with her politics at all, but she's a sincere person, and it happened to her. So, and I believe her. So.
Right. And since you've come out against Joe Biden, we have seen the Blue NonCult come after you and label you with all sorts of smears, like you just said, like a Russian asset. You've been labeled that, among other things. Tell us more about how cancel culture and the Blue NonCult have impacted you and the damage they cause in forming a united working class movement that can implement meaningful changes.
Well, you know, they went after me and then just tried to marginalize me or make me so unappealing, people don't want to hear my story, right? So they went after me with classism because I was working class poor, and they posted my bankruptcy and made it seem like I was a loser. And I think one of them called me a tainted, unemployed loser, slut, a Russian whore who makes all her money on her back. Like they went on and on. But some of these people were blue checks, calling me liars and calling me names. And they weren't just like randoms. And it was a very coordinated attack too by some political operatives and trollbots. And they kept saying the same thing over and over: liar, liar, perjurer, liar, criminal, whatever. And kept planting that seed, until people were like, okay, where is it? Let's find it. And then let's say she did this, she did that. It was terrible. As a person who not experienced that before, that type of bullying, it was unreal, and it affected everything in my life. And how it affects us going forward is definitely, it impedes, it has a chilling effect on anyone wanting to come forward about a powerful man, male or female, right? Because sexual violence is nonpartisan, it's not gender specific. You know, I mean, it happens to, that kind of trauma happens. But what's unique about my situation is that he happens to be president of the United States now, just like when Nita Broderick's, you know, was Clinton. So, you know, when they have that much power, they can weaponize media, they can weaponize social media against you. And, you know, how I can draw this to anti-imperialism is this way. Joe Biden didn't ask me for consent when he sexually assaulted me. Do you think he's going to ask the American people for consent if he goes to war? Because he won't.
They're already doing that. I mean, a lot has happened recently. The Haitian president was assassinated. Biden's continuing to slap sanctions on Belarus. The current administration, like they ghosted Afghanistan in the middle of the night, with plans to keep an eye on the country while they like gave Raytheon a $2 billion deal to ramp up our nuclear capabilities. Like, so
not to mention Palestine, like we're funding Israel to kill civilians and to an ethnic cleansing. It's an atrocity. History is not going to be kind to this period of time. They're going to look at the people calling themselves liberals and there's blood on their hands. And not only just what they're turning their back to of other nations, but like regarding, you know, the sexual assault issue, it's unconscionable that I heard some Democrats, prominent Democrats, say that Biden was the lesser of two evils. Evil is evil.
Yeah.
Degrees of it.
Right.
Period.
And that's what we've been trying to say too. That's what we try. There's no such thing as lesser evil.
Mm-hmm.
I think Joe Biden is more evil than Donald Trump, to be honest.
Wolf in sheep's clothing. Absolutely.
Yeah. And when we say that, people think that we're endorsing Donald Trump. I didn't vote for either of them. I voted for Gloria LaRiva because she was on our ballot in Illinois. And so that's who I voted for because that's where my morals and my values are. And Gloria LaRiva hasn't raped anybody.
Right.
So,
and we don't want predators to be in those kinds of positions of power. I mean, and that's just the bottom line. You want someone who's can be authentic in the world. Maybe you don't agree with every single thing they do, but they're not engaging in predatory behavior. And because that predatory behavior reflects on a meta, doesn't it? Like, look, he does not give a shit about people that are suffering, you know, with not having enough health care. He doesn't give a shit about the student loan. Like, remember the whole big thing, he was going to forgive all that student loan and then he downed it and a little bit of, now it's just off the table.
Kids in cages. Kids in cages, Tara.
Yeah.
You gotta vote for Joe Biden because there's kids in cages.
Right. You know, and you know, Rose McGowan was so great. I remember when she called me when I was going through the thick of this. And she tracked me down and she said, you know, she goes, Tara, I am sorry what you're going through, but I believe you. I believe you. And she'd been going through this for more than a decade. So I'm an amateur. I've only been going through this for 2 years. She's gone through this for more than a decade, been smeared and dragged. And then all of a sudden, she was a hero when Weinstein was going to go to jail. And then she stood up for me, the New York Times, you know, shunned her. She couldn't lift up her album. And, you know,
which is actually amazing. Planet Night is so good.
Do you like it? Isn't it awesome?
I listened to it today. I was like, I was going over like what I wanted to talk about with you, and I was listening to the album, and I was like getting in my feelings. I was
like, the theta beats, the lyrics are really powerful. They really speak to you. And she did a great job with that album. I wish it was more out there. So if we can lift up Planet Nine, we need to do that. So
I agree.
Beautiful. And the theta beats are very healing. So it's meant to be listened to with earphones on, and like you just kind of, I listened to it while I was writing my book as well. So she's the real deal.
What's your favorite song on Planet Nine?
I think it's the second track. I'm trying to remember. It's the one. Is it the Warrior one? Is it the title?
Hold on.
It's number 2 because I would always listen to that over and over again.
Hold on. Let's find out what it's called. It's really important. It's really important.
It's really important. It is really important. There's a couple of them I like. Number 5 and number 2, track 2 and track 5. I know I don't know my numbers.
I'm lame and I haven't heard it yet, and I'm ashamed.
Don't be ashamed. It's just fabulous. Just put your earphones on and lay down, and it's so healing. Did you find it?
Yeah, it's Serene.
Serene, and then what was number 5?
Green Gold.
There you go. Yeah, she's good. She's great. There's even better ones too.
I love Rise, the instrumental one. I don't know like why that like I love her voice. It's like the poetry is just so great, and like the music is really beautiful. And I love trip hop music. It's really trippy. It's really like spacey, and like the instrumental track, I just listened to it on repeat. It was one of my top songs on my Spotify Rewind, and I just listened to that and over 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 again. I never get tired of it.
And you're healed. You're healed.
It is quite healing.
It's healing. It's very healing. It's very relaxing, and it's also motivating. Like with theta beats, it helps you study. So like so that's why people use classical music as well. And so it helped me when I was on a deadline. I was trying to get writing done. Okay, let me feel. I feel like a warrior when I didn't feel like a warrior.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna check that out. I mean, she's doing a really great job with like, you know, talking about like the Free Britney campaign and explaining that. You know, I noticed her doing great work on that, among other things. So we really admire Rose McGowan here on the show as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's amazing, like the Free Britney thing, and and it was front and center for a couple of weeks there, and then all of a sudden, when the judge gave that ruling, nope, and now it's now out of the news. I hope people keep it front and center, because that is so shocking that this woman's like all her rights, like, and it's just, you know, we keep thinking America is so great, and this is an example of things that really need fixed.
I mean,
I'm noticing a pattern here, Tara. Britney Spears, Rose McGowan, Tara Reade, Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Why do women not get anything out of this?
I know, right?
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
I mean, and Britney Spears has been working her ass off and making millions for other people, and she has no life and no autonomy. I can't even imagine that pain. That's because you can't give those years back to her. They're just gone.
No, but, I mean, just like her entire like body was like not just like her voice, like it was in her entire body.
Yeah,
it was that's just her reproductive organs. It's just like that really made me sick.
Yeah,
disgusting. It's disgusting how I mean, and these are all symptoms of capitalism. These are all symptoms, you know, of men literally owning women's bodies and telling them, you know, discarding them when they're not convenient, or when they fight back. When women fight back against the system, they're slut shamed, they're silenced, and you know, you could have a paper trail of over 20 years of the same story, and people corroborating your stories, and people having your back, and it means nothing. It means nothing when like for these people who are afflicted with Trump derangement syndrome, like.
I know, the blue magnum or blue anon, as you call them. You know, it's interesting because in 2019, I wrote a essay about the election, and I predicted it would be Biden and Kamala Harris. I said the DNC are going to try to shove them down everyone's throats, and I hated that I was right. Before Bernie dropped out and before all that, but I predicted it, and I said Joe Biden is the blue Trump. He will be right of Trump. Watch it, and sure enough, and meanwhile, the corporate press is just like little lapdogs just panting and looking up stories about whatever, but they're not talking about the damage that's being done to our country and to our people, because he's just bowing to oligarchs and they're pulling all the strings. You know, it's really
I mean, that $2 billion gift to Raytheon is just one of many examples. I mean, meanwhile, people need relief checks, people need jobs, people need clean water, people need healthcare, people need education, people need, roads. There's numerous places in America where we're unpaving the roads, and we need a government of action.
Yeah.
And we need to change it. We need to seize those means of power, and we need to come together and unite on this. And that's the only way things will really change. That's the only way to get material change, is to change the class character of the society, because the dominant class right now are ruling elites, and this is why our system works the way it does, especially our justice system. It benefits them and not us.
Right. And what's interesting to go off on that is the bourgeois class, the middle class, has been disappearing, but yet there's no movement, no, kind of fight to overturn the elites. I think there's still, because of all the propaganda, this hope, or this American exceptionalism kind of weird propaganda we all came up with in school, that people don't, they're being lulled into complacency. Like, for instance, things that I took for granted, your generation, it's already taken away. And I've told my daughter certain things, that I took for granted when I was younger. Like, for instance, you could buy a car new. You didn't have to be rich, and you didn't have to make payments to a bank. Like, you could buy a car.
Like right off the lot, you could buy it.
Yeah, and you can't do that anymore. And it's things like that. It's like jobs pay. Like, she went for a job literally at the same pay rate scale that I was at a job at her age or younger. And I was like, what is going on? But meanwhile, we all know how much things have increased as far as inflation and prices. So, in housing and the shortage.
Well, yeah, as you know, Karl Marx said, those who own the means of production own the mental means of production.
Right.
So those who own the factories and businesses and whatever else, they also own the media. So we get fed bourgeois media. We get that's people get indoctrinated with bourgeois ideology, and it's up to us to get to people. We need to get out of the movement into the masses,
right?
And we need to get to people with what actual Marxism is and what it could look like in America.
Exactly.
And I think we've seen the working class in America. I think there's an awakening period right now. For example, like what happened, what's going on in Palestine. People have tens of thousands of people across the country have come out in support for Palestinians against the apartheid state of Israel, which our tax dollars are funding. People are awakening to what's going on and how our country is literally the greatest exporter of violence and terror.
Yep.
And they don't want that done in their name.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right on that.
But I think this is a great place to leave it. Fox, I don't know if you have any other questions.
I wanted to try. So I have a really good friend, and we were like each other's emotional support, like during the election, the primary, and she was really she kind of raised an eyebrow when you decided to chat with Megyn Kelly. But Megyn Kelly went through her own thing with like corporate media and getting like silenced and pushed out. Why is it important? Like you said, like this is not a bipartisan, this is not a partisan issue.
Right.
Or this, right. This is,
it crosses all socioeconomic gender lines. Yeah.
Right. And
sexual violence is crossing all of that. Yeah.
So when you talk to people like Megyn Kelly, what is your experience with, like, ideologically you have like almost nothing in common, but like Eric was saying, people can see the forest for the trees. Like, we're starting to see the forest for the trees. And I do think it's important that we talk to conservatives instead of just labeling them all as Nazi, racist, homophobic,
Right.
transphobic. Like they just have, there's like this giant check mark list. So why did you decide to go on Chat with Megyn Kelly? Were there more reasons?
Well, she didn't have a platform at the time. And I felt like no matter what network I was on, I was going to be pegged political. And if I was going to go on NBC or any of those, they were going to just do a gotcha and they were going to edit it, and it wasn't going to be my story. And if I went on Fox or one of those, it was the same. They were going to say I was a Trump supporter, and it wouldn't be the same. Megyn Kelly has interviewed she's had difficult interviews. She's very well known to be a tough interviewer. I knew she'd be tough on me, which she was. It was not an easy interview. And, she definitely, we didn't know each other. And she didn't, but Rich McHugh who is Ronan Farrow's writing partner, did several stories about me, and they had worked together, and apparently, so Rich McHugh produced that interview. And I felt lucky to have her do that. And it was on YouTube instead of it kind of shocked everyone. But now you see a trend towards people not using, and I also kind of wanted to it was my little salty way of saying we need to choose alternative platforms, because this isn't working. The mainstream is not working. And I had originally agreed to another interview with Chris Wallace, and I got death threats the night before, and I was up until 4 a.m, and the call time with him was early, and I was just like, I can't. And then he gave me space. And then during that time, my conversations with Megyn increased, and I reached out, and Chris knew why, and he was very gracious about it. But then I reached back out and said, look, I have this, and I'm going to be doing this. And, he probably was upset, but I had to do what was right for me at the time. And Megyn Kelly also survived sexual harassment and survived the silencing of it and suppression of it. So she really understood it in a way that other reporters probably didn't, other journalists. There are other journalists who have been sexually assaulted and whatnot, but she kind of went through a whole thing. She worked at both NBC and Fox, and both of those networks are notoriously terrible.
Oh my God,
she is an amazing, resilient person. So it was really good to do that. My story came in dribs and drabs, unfortunately. And it was just pulled apart by different interests, because Anita Dunn had that, for instance, Hillary Rosen, who's a very famous political operative for the DNC, she called Law and Crime, which is an independent, that independent thing, called the editor-in-chief and told them not to run a story about me in the future, and went through the story that they were working on about Time's Up line by line to see if they could sue them. And they couldn't. But if you ask the editor-in-chief of Law and Crime, he'll tell you that story. So they were making phone calls behind the scenes to silence me. And it didn't work. And I won't let it work, because if they are successful in smearing and silencing me, they will do it to the person behind me. And that's why, I'd rather just go be in my yurt, somewhere in the wilderness with my horse, and never deal with anybody again. But, realistically, this is important, and standing up, because I feel like your generation, my daughter's generation, deserves a better future all the way around.
Well, Tara, I think this was a wonderful discussion. We admire you for your bravery and all the work that you're doing. Before we wrap, where can people find your work?
You can find my work on RT, the op-eds, and I pretty much weekly, and then also Substack. I have a Substack now, so I'll put old articles on there. as we move forward. And the book, Left Out When the Truth Doesn't Fit In, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, usual places, but you can look at tarareadeauthor.com. Some people don't want to use Amazon at all. And if they don't, tarareadeauthor.com is the place to go. taratruth.com was created by Avalon Clare, who's this fabulous graphic artist, and she lays out my story really well with graphics. So
we love a visual.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do. Well, thank you so much. We hope to have you on again soon.
Thank you. You take care.